Fairy lights and dancing. Two sisters just celebrating a birthday. It ended in the brutal murder of them both. The man who killed Bieber Henry and Nicole Smallman in June 2020 was 18 years old. He'd set out to kill women. Less than a year later, Sarah Everard was just walking home when she was kidnapped, raped and killed by a serving police officer. It was a moment of national rage. Enough, protesters said in the parks and on the streets. But the killing of women continued. Fawzia Javed was pregnant when she was murdered by her husband, pushed off Arthur's Seat in Edinburgh in the autumn of that year. Barely a fortnight later, Sabina Nessa was killed by a man who set out to attack any stranger as long as it was a woman.
Statement, Minister Jess Phillips.
There is an epidemic of violence against women, the government admit. Today, they promise to try to end it.
Last year, 1 in every 8 women was a victim of domestic abuse, stalking or sexual assault. Every day, 200 rapes are reported to the police and many go unreported. Behind every one of these figures is a woman or girl whose life has been shattered. And behind every crime lies a perpetrator who all too often gets away scot-free. For too long, we have accepted these statistics as simply a fact of life. Today, this government says no more.
Shana Begum spent years trapped by domestic abuse and now works with survivors of all forms of violence against women. She says the promise of system-wide reform is welcome.
As a survivor, I've been in the system in 2003 and again in 2018. And the system hasn't changed much because it's a beast of a system. We're talking first responders, social workers, housing. If you've got children, we're talking about criminal courts. We're talking about family courts. It's huge. And this strategy has captured every single area. The real work starts now.
The strategy is cross-government, with multiple departments taking responsibility and funding work to tackle violence against women and girls. It comes with an action plan which is laser-focused on prevention. Schools will get a £20 million package to spot the signs of misogyny, including a teachers' training fund and a helpline to support young people worried about abuse in their own relationships. The hope that it will prevent boys from growing into abusive men. There'll be a safeguarding programme for the entire NHS workforce to better identify and help victims of domestic and sexual violence. It also focuses on what it calls the relentless pursuit of perpetrators, promising police reform to ensure they treat violence against women and girls as a top priority, and improving victims' and survivors' experience of the justice system that so often fails them. The government says it's a strategy backed by £1 billion, but not all of that is new money. And the fear is that it's not enough money.
Now it's all about the infrastructure, making sure that you've got local buy-in and the right amount of funding that goes with that.
If this works, it will identify more victims, more women will come forward, but the services have got to be there, and at the moment, they're not.
It will create a lot of bottlenecks, especially with criminal justice, family courts. There's so many survivors who've said to me, I wish I never disclosed because now I'm trapped in limbo. Am I going to get justice? Am I not? And I think that harm needs to be recognised.
And it's about making sure that they deliver on their promise.
The government has to deliver and local areas need to be as enthusiastic as I am.
Yeah, otherwise there's a risk of promising something that you don't deliver for these women, and that's dreadful, isn't it?
Which is harmful for not just society as a whole, but you could lose lives.
The government understands what's at stake. The question is, can it deliver? It's given itself a decade. For the victims living with violence on a daily basis, they must make progress much earlier than that. Well, I went to meet the Prime Minister on a visit to a school in South East London as he prepared to launch the strategy. In an exclusive interview, he first told me just why it is so personal to him.
Well, it is personal. When I was the Chief Prosecutor, starting back in 2008, I met many victims of violence against women and girls and families of those victims, and I heard their experiences, and I had a sort of inner determination to do something about it. I heard the parents of Jane Clough, who was murdered by her ex-partner, and her parents, John and Penny, came to see me, and they told me at great length and in detail what had happened to their girl and their own experience of going through our criminal courts. And at the end of that meeting, I said, we're going to change this and we're going to do it together. And since then, I've had many victims. I've been absolutely determined. And part of the reason, in a sense, that I left the law and came into politics was because I felt that on issues like violence against women and girls, there was only so much that could be done within criminal justice, and we needed an all-government response. And therefore, I'm really pleased personally to be launching this strategy.
Which is exactly what this strategy is about, isn't it? But there's some confusion, I think, because you will measure success, how it's working, by measuring, the document says, the proportion of people, that's women and men, over 16 who are victims of sexual violence. This doesn't sound like a violence against women and girls strategy if you're measuring violence against men and women, but not girls.
Well, I think you can measure both, and then within that, we will obviously look at the different numbers for men and for women. But don't doubt my determination that we are going to deal with violence against women and girls. We've said...
But why are you not measuring it?
Well, within those numbers, you can differentiate, and so we can judge how we're doing. But it is important that the aim here is to halve violence against women and girls. That is really difficult. I mean, when we were doing this, when I was prosecutor, we were bringing down as a percentage the numbers, but halving it is really difficult.
The cost to society of domestic abuse is a staggering nearly £90 billion. Rape is £6 billion. How much money is in this strategy to counter that challenge?
Well, if you put all of the money that the government is putting into our violence against women and girls work, then we're talking about over £1 billion, which is a significant investment by the government.
How much is new?
Quite a lot of it is new money.
But not £1 billion?
Not £1 billion, but collectively that's £1 billion. That is a big commitment from the government. And we put extra money into, for example, shelters and safe accommodation, extra money into making sure we've got experts in control rooms for 999 calls, and extending the orders that can be applied for by victims and survivors.
Just to be clear, people have waited a long time for this strategy. It is, you're continually saying, the most ambitious strategy by any government. How much is new money? If the cost of domestic abuse is £90 billion to society, you need to counter that with a significant investment. And many people are telling us there isn't enough investment in this to work.
Well, firstly, there is a significant amount of money overall going into this. Secondly, all of the organisations and campaigners and those with real experience, lived experience in many cases, that have been working with us are really pleased to see this strategy, and they do think it's ambitious.
A lot of them have told me today they're disappointed.
Well, we had I think 50 or 60 of them into Downing Street. I personally worked with them in the day that they were in with us, and these reflect the things that they've told us matter most.
Absolutely. In fairness, they all say we're grateful at the scale of ambition, but the scale of investment doesn't match your ambition. Prevention is a big part of this. You said that. £20 million to empower teachers to fight misogyny and harmful attitudes, particularly among young boys.
Yeah.
How does £20 million spread across schools across the country counteract someone like Andrew Tate? He has 11 million followers on X, spouting hatred against women, and very popular with young men.
Yeah, well, let me deal with both aspects of your question because they're both important. The first is that money can be spent in schools like this, going through relationship discussions, not as an add-on, but as a part of the core work that they're doing. I've seen this for myself, seen the children and young people engaging with it, and it is game-changing, and it's really important. It's been called for a very, very long time. Within that, and central to your challenge, which is a real challenge, characters, people like Andrew Tate, are a real difficulty, and for teenage boys, they need to talk about that because it's very difficult for them to navigate their way.
Countering the damage he causes. You know, is £20 million up to that challenge he posted on X? The second you listen to women, instead of using them for children, society is cooked. He's on the same platform as your government pushes out communications. Yet what can you do about him?
Well, we can push out communications, but there's no substitute for having the discussion with children.
But what can you do about him?
Well,
And people like him,
well,
who have enormous reach.
Yeah, we need to firstly make sure that online platforms are only putting out appropriate content and in accordance with the law and the frameworks there. But we need to talk to young people about this. Many young boys are exposed to Andrew Tate and many other things of the same type, which is, on the one hand, a sort of an attraction, but on the other hand, loaded with misogyny. We have to talk about it. That's why we have to do the work within schools, talking to 13, 14, 15-year-old boys. I mean, not just boys, but particularly boys, I think, on this issue.
That feeds into domestic abuse attitudes by young men, doesn't it? The men they end up being. Domestic Abuse Commissioner is hugely supportive of the ambition of the strategy, but says the level of investment falls seriously short, and without better funding, she simply doesn't see how the numbers of domestic abuse victims will fall.
Well, the strategy is designed to ensure that they do, and we'll keep monitoring that. We put in significant resource. Many people do say it's a good strategy, we want to get behind it, let's roll it out, let's get it going. There will always be an argument, I do understand that, that you could spend more money. Of course there's an argument on that. We've put significant resource behind it.
Something as huge as this that people have waited so long for.
Hear me out, because it is important that we've spent a lot of time talking about the money. We've not spent much time talking about the actual measures in the strategy. So forgive me, I do think they're important. The preventative measures in terms of the teaching within schools, the domestic abuse protection orders, which are now available for anybody to apply for and can be indefinite. This has been a real problem in the past. The locating of experts in 999 calls is a game changer. It makes loads of evidence to show it makes a real difference. Money going into further protection and accommodation for victims and survivors, so they've got a safe place to go to, and more powers for the Victims Commissioner. These are significant steps. They're the most significant steps that any government has ever taken.
There are serious questions for many victims and survivors about confidence in your government's ability to deliver this. The handling of the grooming inquiry so far has been shambolic. You've seen victims and survivors walking away because they felt manipulated and gaslit, they told us, by your government. The same things they felt at the hands of their perpetrators. It's disastrous, isn't it?
Well, it's very important that we have the national inquiry, and we've set that up, and we've now got an excellent chair for that inquiry. It will go wherever the evidence leads it, so there's no limit to where it goes, and every stone needs to be overturned so that we can get to the absolute truth here. We must also, alongside that, be absolutely clear that where there's evidence to go to court, we want the cases to go to criminal courts.
It's about confidence in your government, isn't it? It's about confidence in you.
Yes, I accept that. And we've set up the national inquiry. We've got Jess Phillips in rolling out the violence against women and girls strategy.
Some of the victims, survivors called for her to resign.
She has devoted her life to this, both before she was in Parliament and since she's been in Parliament, to this issue. She cares deeply about it. I care deeply about it. We've worked with organisations that say they think the strategy is in the right place. Of course, people are going to push us to go further. I completely understand that. In fact, when I saw the organisations, I encouraged them to do so. I said, you will always say, this is good, but do more of that. That's the nature of working in partnership with them.
They are grateful for your leadership on it because they need somebody to drive this home. But there is clearly a worry. You've admitted yourself that speculation about your leadership is rife. Will you still be here as PM to drive this in a year's time, in 6 months' time?
Yes. One of the reasons I came into politics was because I was frustrated that we couldn't deal with issues like violence against women and girls within the cylinder, within the sphere that was criminal justice. So I came in to do this. I'm really pleased to. I wanted to head the launch of this strategy to show how much I care about it. So I'll be here next year and the year after rolling this out. This matters to me, as I said to you at the beginning. This is a political mission of the government. It's a personal mission of mine.
Prime Minister, thanks very much for talking to us.
Thank you.
Well, joining me now to discuss the strategy is the psychotherapist Noor Norris, whose sister and niece were murdered by her niece's ex-partner. She successfully campaigned for domestic abuse specialists to be placed in 999 call handling rooms. Also with me is Soma Sara, who founded Everyone's Invited, an online charity which allows survivors to share their stories anonymously. And Nicole Jacobs is the Domestic Abuse Commissioner for England and Wales. Thanks to all of you for joining us. I mean, Noor Norris, your story of the devastating loss of your sister and niece, Raneem and Kaola, is what today is all about, is trying to stop that happening again. Have you heard enough from the Prime Minister? Have you seen enough in the strategy?
Well, first of all, I welcome all the initiative that the government's putting together, and I must highlight how important it is to come in place in such a time where nothing was in place for domestic abuse. So I'm always grateful and happy for that. Early days to see that what they have promised is fully delivered, and I think there is a huge gap in the system anyway. So to fill that gap will take time. Otherwise, as for Raneem's law, I am really happy and grateful because it goes under the band of prevention. So saving people from losing their life potentially, and like what happened to Raneem and Kaola. So my campaign has been all about the prevention and early intervention.
Because you know too well the devastation this causes.
Absolutely, absolutely. No one should go through what Raneem and Kaola went through. When we had the inquest and we brought it to the Prime Minister, at the time wasn't, but we brought it forward as a campaign, we realised that it wasn't really a family devastating story. It's actually the whole country crisis, and it's really showing the failing and the bad culture of domestic abuse at the time.
And I mean, Samar, your response to the overall strategy initially, before we come on to prevention, which is a key part of it?
I mean, we're encouraged by the strategy. It's a groundbreaking strategy, and this focus on prevention is something that we've been calling for the past 5 years. You know, when we started Everyone's Invited, people didn't believe the epidemic levels and scale of violence happening, especially in schools. And to have, you know, this strategy come out, and then, you know, to have this acknowledged as a national emergency.
So the recognition in itself
Absolutely.
is valuable.
It's valuable. It is valuable, and it makes a huge difference, especially for survivors, especially for young people. And you know, we're really pleased to see that.
Dame Nicole Jacobs, I mean, Noor's story will be horribly familiar to you as the Domestic Abuse Commissioner. The scale of domestic abuse is truly staggering. We talk about millions of women, the scale of sexual violence too. What did you hear from the Prime Minister today that tells you this is a moment of seismic change? Did you hear enough?
I didn't hear enough. I agree completely that this is the ability of this strategy to potentially shift in a way we have never seen before is to be acknowledged. I mean, absolutely. I couldn't underscore that enough. Have been waiting for years for the kind of action plan that you see coming out today. My concern is, do we have the resource to really implement this? I have been the Domestic Abuse Commissioner for 6 years, after having worked in frontline services for many years before that. And I have seen things implemented well, but more times than not, I've seen things implemented poorly, without enough attention, without enough resource. And what I need to see more clearly is how this is going to pan out. This is a huge, ambitious plan, far-reaching plan. We want it to work, but we've got to understand. I think we can count on the Prime Minister to be dedicated and ministers to be dedicated. That's really clear. It needs attention from the top at all times, and very importantly, the resource, the money.
He talked about £1 billion. Not all of that is new money.
No, in fact, most of it, you have to understand, when we hear £1 billion, it's over multiple years. A large part of it is for accommodation, like what we think of as refuge. That is a duty that was created in the Domestic Abuse Act. That is established, and there is an uplift, which I acknowledge, but also the other half of it, roughly, is through the Ministry of Justice to police and crime commissioners for victim services generally. So my job as the Domestic Abuse Commissioner is to map and to talk about, are there resources in place? And it's very clear for children, for adult victims of domestic abuse, we are not near where we need to be. And so the resource just is not going to be able to respond adequately to this uptick of activity.
And the uptick of activity is very much focused around prevention. Going into schools, a lot of focus on boys today. The Conservative leaders say it's demonising boys, but you already do that work, don't you? Tell me how it works and why it works in your view.
So, for the past 3 years, we've been going into schools. We've reached almost 70,000 young people, and we are delivering life-changing education. We are empowering young people with tools, with skills to learn about consent, healthy relationships, to understand sexual violence. And it is just so critical that they receive that. And what's even more important is that their voices and their stories are embedded in the content. And that's exactly what we do. We have a student advisory board, and we work really closely with young people to make sure that their experiences are at the heart of what we're delivering, because the harms are changing rapidly by the day. And we know tech-facilitated enabled violence, nudify apps, it's encouraging to see that's going to be banned, but who knows what the next thing's going to be.
And we talked to the Prime Minister about Andrew Tate. He acknowledged it is a difficulty because young men, young boys are attracted to what he's saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not on the extreme, is it?
It's not. I mean, it's become completely mainstream. And young people everywhere, especially men and boys, are vulnerable to radicalization online. But it's also not just about boys. It's about girls. We cannot forget the girls in this. The support needs to be there for the victims.
And Noor, your sister's story was also one of system failure, wasn't it? This focus on prevention. What's your view about what the government are talking about today?
I think it's very important. They are tackling it from every angle because they understand the level of failing in a system. So they came into power.
And the failures are everywhere, aren't they?
Exactly. So like I said, filling the gap will take a long time. But I think publicly, what they've done, they've made a huge announcement with a huge awareness. So we have prevention and early intervention. Now we have awareness, and under the band of awareness, they have achieved that. Yes, maybe £1 billion is not enough, and will never be. Money will never be. But now it's in the hand of the people. Now we've got the announcement of it. We want public to come forward and do something about it, because I think this is not just a government issue, and this is a everywhere issue. We talk about, I train sometimes like corporates and schools, etc., psychotherapists, everyone's issue. We must all do something about it.
There is an issue, there is a question, isn't there, for all of the people providing the services, that if the awareness works, if the prevention works, more victims and survivors will come forward to go to which services? That issue of the bottleneck that we talked about in the piece, that is going to be a problem, isn't it?
I believe it will be. And I do really appreciate what Noor is saying in terms of this is a marked change for our society. And it's something we welcome the government in making sure we perceive these issues as everyone's business. And there's a lot of hope. You can hear in the work you've accomplished so much of what can be done. So this is achievable. But the reality is we do have to face up to the more you are sitting in a classroom and needing that help and support you just mentioned, the more you have GPs, for example, playing their part. People, when the victim leaves the GP door, where will they go for ongoing support? That's what I mean. It's not that this isn't achievable. It's not that it isn't laudable. It is that we have to face up to the reality of how that will bring forward victims who will really need in the here and now help and support.
Very briefly to you two, Samar first. Is it achievable in your view?
We are hopeful. We're hopeful. At the end of the day, it's a piece of paper, but acknowledgement, at that level, saying this is an epidemic of violence. I mean, that's what we were saying 5 years ago, and no one believed us. And look at what's happened today.
And someone who's been devastated by this, it's important that it is achievable, isn't it?
I think it is achievable, but we need to put pressure on. And I spoke to the Prime Minister a few weeks ago, and he said, "No, you need to put pressure and challenge us." And I think everyone needs to pressure and challenge this to make it drive better.
Thank all of you for coming in this evening. Really appreciate it. Nice to talk to you. Thank you.